Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Karina, and I'm getting situated in my chair here. My podcast is about knitting and my horsemanship journey and other life things. And life in the Pacific Northwest, really. I live in the northwest part of Washington State with my partner, our two kitties, Herbert and Harley, who occasionally make an appearance during the podcast, and my two horses, Bragi and Odin the Mustangs. These are horses I adopted from the Bureau of Land Management Wild Horse Adoption Program. Odin is my riding horse. He is 11 years old. He's a gray gelding, and I often post little snippets at the end of the main video of just pictures of us riding, or sometimes even little videos. And Bragi is my 5-year-old Mustang, and he is in the process of getting trained under saddle. He's a very different horse than Odin. Odin is very thoughtful and not particularly emotional. He internalizes a lot of things, so it's kind of hard to describe him without like being with him. But he's super reliable and like I said, very thoughtful. So he's not the one who, he might, get afraid of something and just kind of dash off to the side a little bit, but he doesn't go very far before he stops and thinks about it. Bragi is the complete opposite. If something scares him, he might just completely lose his marbles and run away, bucking and kicking and farting and all that kind of stuff that horses do. What my trainer and I are teaching him is how to be more thoughtful, because that's what you want in a riding horse, is a thoughtful horse, not one that is, when he's startled by something, he's going to run off bucking and kicking and farting, because that can be dangerous for both the horse and rider. So more on that later, but let's get to the knitting. Well, first let's just talk about what day it is. It is Monday morning. It is early Monday morning. I am working today. It's July 31st, the last day of July. I'm still on 8-hour days, so I have a little extra time before I really need to get started. Next week I start 10-hour days, so I will be working from 6 a.m. to 4:30. So I will need to be a little bit more diligent about my podcasting schedule on the weekends. However, we are leaving for vacation on Saturday. We are going back to Maine and New Hampshire for my partner's family reunion. And the next podcast I do, I hope to have some footage from that. Speaking of vacation, I was just back in Wisconsin visiting my mom and my sister. I really didn't take any pictures. I was in the moment a lot, so just not really thinking about photographing things. The three of us went up to Door County, which is, my hand is Wisconsin. Door County is in the thumb, which is Lake Michigan is in this part of Wisconsin. Lake Superior is up in this part of Wisconsin. I will say Lake Michigan is a beautiful lake. It was very clear and not as wild as Lake Superior can be. Of course, Lake Superior is a much bigger lake. Lake Superior is kind of like being on the ocean. So, I think I have a photograph. I might have one photograph from that trip, which is kind of funny since we were up there for 3 days. It was really fun getting to hang out with my mom and my sister and walking around. We stayed at an Airbnb in Sturgeon Bay. The Airbnb we were at was a little dumpier than what we usually stay at, but it was in a nice location. Could walk to town. We could walk across either of the bridges to the other part of town. So that was really nice. We went to a farmer's market and bought some of the famous Door County cherries. So those were really tasty. We had dinner out, we had dinner in. We did a fair amount of touring around, and I did buy yarn. I did not bring it with me up here upstairs to show you, but I'll talk about it. It's a hopefully I'll remember to bring it in a future podcast. So, but let's just talk about finished objects. So I have one pair of socks. These are called Fairgrounds socks. It's a pattern. It looks like the sun's kind of starting to shine in, so there's a little bit of a glare. These are a pattern by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. And let me just give you a little detail. So it's a fun little wavy pattern, pretty easy to memorize. Heel flap and gusset. I really like the way she does the instructions for the heel flap and gusset. You will notice that I ran out of yarn for the contrasting. It's got hair on it. It's my hair. Oh, well, and that's what happens. You knit it into your garment. So anyway, I ran out of the contrasting yarn and had to add a little bit of the self-striping yarn, which is totally fine. This is the yarn, speaking of yarn, is a Freckled Whimsy Yarn of the Month Club self-striping yarn. It's the Serendipity base. And it is the Harry Potter series. They're the Fingering Weight Yarn of the Month Club. I think it's a 75-25 superwash, but I don't remember, and I didn't bring the label. But anyway, these were really fun. I knit 64 stitches. That's the cast on. I use size 0 needles, which are 2mm needles to get my gauge, because apparently I knit fairly loosely. Yeah, so just fun, really fun pattern, and I really like the this color combination for this pattern. So it's one I will knit again. I'm really enjoying the self-striping yarn by Freckled Whimsy, and we'll knit. And I really like Kay Jones patterns. They're very suitable for self-striping yarn. So those are fun, and they're not expensive. So last time one of my works in progress was I think I had the test knit done. This was by Seedling Stitch. I finished it. It's way too big. I'm gonna rip it out and do it over again and knit it in the, let's see, the front. I screwed up the I-cord ribbing on the front, so I can tell which the front is. So this is way too big. So I'm gonna knit it probably the smaller size. My gauge swatch did not match my actual knitting gauge, which is unfortunate, because it's a cool pattern. It's a vine pattern. It's a little bit complex, but it has this really cute cable pattern that goes down both sides, front and back, and then down the sides. So part of it was the yarn I used. I used a cotton sport weight, I think, and I think she called for a linen. Let me look here. So this is a Cotton DK weight, and I think she called for a sport weight. I mean, I did my gauge, thought I had it okay, but when I actually started knitting it, it changed. I wasn't the only test knitter that complained about that, so she adjusted the pattern for that. I'm trying to look at the content of the yarn. This is a Knit Picks. Oh, okay. So this is 70% cotton and 30% linen. It's called Cotton. The color is gray, which you can see, but it's U789 is the color. So nice neutral. So I'm gonna redo this. I might take this on vacation, and actually I can't because my needles are that for this pattern are occupied by something else. So I know a lot of knitters have more than one pair of needles for one set of needles of the same size. In order to make my works in progress manageable, I just have the one set of needles. I confess I have 2 sets of needles for my socks, with 2 sets of the size 0, the Chagu red lace, my favorite. 1 set's bamboo, 1 set's steel, and so, but you know, socks are small, so that's how I justify that. I can have more than 1 pair of socks on my needles. Speaking of socks, I am doing the Stephen West mystery sock cowl. So I'm behind, so if you're doing this, there shouldn't be any surprises. So this is a really interesting pattern. So it's a contrast blast, I think is what he calls them. So there's the cuff, and then there's this little cable part. This is Knit Picks. I'll tell you what it is. I know the color is dove gray. Well, now it's bugging me what the oh, stroll, of course. It's like for your feet. So this is the Knit Picks or this is the main color that I chose. So Knit Pick Stroll Dove Heather. The contrast color is this. This is a Knitivity yarn. This is a hand-dyed yarn from Ray Whiting. That's Knitivity.com is his website, and I don't know that there is actually a color. I think he just numbers them. So, but this, I thought this was just going to be really fun. And he lives in Texas somewhere hot and humid, so maybe around Houston, not sure. But anyway, that's where I get got that variegated yarn. And so there's this section, so there's the cuff, there's this cabled section that goes into this kind of stair-steppy section, which goes into this kind of brick section, and then the heel is striped. I messed up. So it's supposed to be main color, contrast color. I accidentally knit the contrast color too many times. So I just did the heel flap. Oh, and I just pulled my needles out. Isn't that nice? So I'm gonna talk while I put these together, back together, because that is really irritating. But anyway, it's a heel flap and gusset, which is fine. That's the kind of heel I do all the time, so that was not intimidating to me at all. I understand that later on in this pattern, and I'm kind of dropping stitches as I go here, there's some cabling at where the decreases go, so we'll have to see how that goes. But he sets it up well, because he has you do the decreases 4 stitches before you get into the instep, and that's where the cable goes. It's those 4 stitches. So it's a very easy cable. It's a hold in, for the top part, I think it was a hold in front. I don't remember exactly, but, or maybe it was hold it in back, but both are knit stitches. Normally when you cable, often when you cable, you are purling one either on the main needle or the cable needle, or vice versa. But his are knit, so it's a pretty easy cable. So got my stitches back on. Yeah, so I need to print the rest of the pattern before we leave on vacation, so I have the rest of the foot and toe. That is that. Contrast blast. Fun stuff. So I feel like I have 2 whips that are in timeout, so I'm not showing them. Oh, well, I've got 2 more to show you. So this is a project I cast on while I was up in Door County with my mom and my sister. Caitlin Hunter, Boyland Knits, was having a sale on her patterns, and I got the Misurina pattern. And this is a top-down sweater. It is fingering weight Brooklyn tweed. So, and it's an interesting combination of, okay, let me see. Interesting combination of lace and color work. And I've just started the color work section on the yoke. And also there are cables. I don't remember her cables, whether they are also both knit. I feel like they are. So I'm kind of loving these cables. So I don't know if you can see the cables and kind of the lace in there. Let's see if I can, there we go. And then, like I said, I just started the color work section. I am using a Brooklyn tweed. So I think, so there's this color, and this is the main color, Goldfinch. And it's kind of a rough feeling yarn. It's kind of a rustic. It's woolen spun, 2-ply. This is the Tones Light. It is American Columbia wool. Let's see the label. It's kind of, sorry, there's a glare. But that's what it is. I don't remember what the name of the pink is. Let's see if I can find it in here. I don't know why this is so hard. This one's Goldfinch. So, and what is interesting about this is American yarn. So the origin is in Johnson County, Wyoming. It was scoured in San Angelo, Texas, spun in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, dyed in Philadelphia, and designed in Portland. So I think that's just really, it's well traveled. Okay, this might be the color. Hollyhock, good grief. So that's the pink color, is the Hollyhock. Well traveled yarn. I bought it because Brooklyn Tweed was having a sale that benefited, there was a benefit that I believe in. So the proceeds, a certain amount of the proceeds were going towards this good cause. I was going to take a guess that it might have been a literacy project, but I honestly don't remember, so I could just be telling lies at this point. There's a safety pin here, so I don't know what that was from. I am just going to attach it to the handle. Oh, I bet it was that Stephen West sock where I dropped the stitches, but I was using safety pins as a stitch marker. So I think when I go on vacation and I don't need yarn, I'm going to start buying stitch markers because, you know, I'm using safety pins. I'm using, you know, yarn tied in a little loop, which, you know, it's not a terrible thing, but stitch markers are cool. Anyway, still drinking my morning tea, drinking green tea. A lot of times I drink black tea. My first cup of tea is always black tea. My second cup of tea is often black tea, but sometimes it is green tea. The last episode I showed you, I finished Rocket Tee, where I did a, the Rocket Tee is a striped short sleeve top made out of fingering weight and lace weight. So it was striped in a fingering weight and a mohair. This time, so as soon as I finished that one, I cast on another one. And it is you knit the yoke back and forth, and then I am at the point where I am going to join it. And instead of striping it with fingering and mohair, I decided to hold the two together. And for the stripes, I'm doing this pearl row to distinguish the stripes. A friend of mine did that. She just used fingering weight and did this pearl row for the striping, and I really liked it, so I decided to do use the same yarn that I knit my last one, just holding it together. And it has a very different color than my last one. So my last one, so this is the fingering weight, this is the mohair. So if you can imagine, if you didn't catch my last episode, you know, it's these two in stripes. So instead, this one is, and I would, if I was smart, I would use the these little holder thingies so that I didn't lose my stitches again. Well, I kind of lost track of them. I think they were my, oh, here they are. I think these were my grandmother's. So anyway, so your stitches don't fall off your needles when you're showing stuff. So yeah, so it's a different color, and the mohair really influences the color. So I do really like that light blue. So those are my whips. Those are my finished objects. I think, so what I've been doing is I've been working on the Stephen West sock in the morning, because I get up really early in the morning and I knit before I drink a cup of tea before I get going for the day. And I've been knitting those Stephen West socks then. If I have a Zoom meeting or a midday break, I'll knit on the rocket tee that I just showed you. And then usually my evening knit is the Misurina top. So typically I have 3 projects on the go. That's enough. 4 gets a little overwhelming for me, so I keep it at 3, and that works just fine. Usually one of them is a pair of socks. I work at home, so I'm finding I don't wear my knitted tops as much, because a lot of times during breaks, I'll walk out to the barn for 5 minutes, and the barn's dirty, and I don't really want to get my knitwear dirty. So, but it's also been, we've had a long dry summer, so it's been kind of warm, and I haven't really wanted to wear my knitwear. It's just been a little too warm. I have a sweatshirt on now. It was the morning temperature this morning was in the 40s. So we haven't seen that in a while. It's going to get up to about 75 or so. Quite nice. It's warm for us. I mean, Pacific Northwest, I mean, it's sunny and 72 is kind of an average summer temperature. We've had summer since about May. Normally we start getting summer around July 5th, but it has been quite a long and dry summer this year. So we do need some rain. It's supposed to get hot next week. Meaning that it's going to be in the 80s, but we will be back east then. So, which I understand their summers so far has been like torrential downpours or just like really stinking hot and humid. So, I'm not sure how to prepare for that. Big suitcase, I guess. Okay, what I've been up to besides vacation. What do we do? Oh, Saturday. I feel like I had something in the morning. What did I have in the morning? Oh, my farrier came in the morning. So that's always, just fun to catch up with her and her assistant, who's also another friend of mine. I trail ride with her assistant. Well, I did in the spring quite a lot. Our schedules haven't meshed lately, so we haven't been able to ride together, but both of them live pretty close to me, and they have access to the trail, direct access to the trails from their property. So even if they are not available, I can drive my truck and trailer with my horse and go there and ride. So yeah, so I did that farrier, and then we my partner has a long friendship with some people he started mountain biking with a long time ago, like the 90s, I think. And they started what is called a veggie derby. A veggie derby is where you build this little car out of fruits and vegetables, and it can be either a creature or it can be a car that has a driver. So in other words, it has to have something with eyeballs, if the creature has eyeballs. And then you race them down a ramp. So everything has to be connected with like wooden skewers and toothpicks. I don't think there's any other. I think you can use metal skewers, but in general, it needs to be out of wooden skewers. And you can't, manufacturers, you can't glue or screw things together or stuff like that, which doesn't even make sense with fruits and vegetables. And it has to be all vegetation. It can't be any other type of matter. You can use coconuts as part of it. I mean, I guess that's vegetation. I mean, I don't know where you draw the line between like using some sort of a stick or, I don't know. I wasn't there for the original thing, but this has been going on a long time. And then you race the cars down a steep ramp, to see who goes the fastest. And then the winner gets to race again. And then eventually there is the fastest car. So it's really fun. I have some pictures from that, including mine. I made a watermelon princess that it was like the bell. I hollowed out the half of a personal sized watermelon and then put the like tricycle wheels on the inside so you couldn't see the wheels. And then my princess was a jalapeno pepper with corn silk hair. Randy's was a taro root kind of dragster type car with I think a carrot top that had not a carrot top, it was the root end of the carrot, so with the root still attached, so it was like this funny strand of hair, and his had a spoiler on it. So I'll put pictures at the end of this so that you can see it. Yeah, it was really fun. There were 21 entries, so that was pretty awesome. A lot of people new to it. There's always new people every year, and it's always a learning experience. There is a first prize for the most creative, and everyone gets to vote, oh gosh, I wish I would have thought of that category. And then there's for the fastest. So Randy usually wins one of the categories, and it looked like his car was going to win the fastest, but his was going the fastest and the straightest down the ramp. And that is a challenge when you're using vegetables, because your car doesn't always go straight. But his was. He used a daikon radish for wheels, so it was a pretty hefty daikon radish, and then used a hole saw to cut the wheels out. So they were really quite straight, and his kept going like straight and true and surviving each, because that's the other thing that happens. It goes down the ramp and ends up in a sidewalk, and then there's a lot of carnage. I mean, you can put your car back together using the original pieces, or if there's spare pieces, like for instance, some people use apples for wheels, so you might bring a bag of apples in order, like if one of them just falls off and disappears down the street, then you have another one. You can't add things to it. So like for instance, if you had apples for wheels and they fell off, you can't go back and use onions for wheels. So but anyway, at the end there was a butternut squash that had, I can't remember what the wheels were, but that one Randy miscalculated which side to let his car down, because this was running straight, and he looked at the other car and said, oh, that's going to veer one way or another. Well, he guessed wrong, and it veered, and it just totally took his out and then went straight on down. So, but the good news is that his was voted the most creative. So, you know, he got the prize for that, which was pretty awesome. But, you know, and if that butternut squash car hadn't taken his out, he would have gotten the first prize for both, which he probably has done before. Like I said, he's been doing this since like 97, so he's got lots of practice doing it. The last Veggie Derby was before the pandemic, so we hadn't seen some of these people since then. So it was really fun to get together with them, and that was Saturday evening, afternoon and evening. Yeah, so that was really fun. And then yesterday, Sunday, I Zoomed with my mom and my sister, which we often do on Sunday mornings. And then I took Odin for a ride. I didn't really have enough time to arrange for any company to ride with. And we've been riding by ourselves, which has been really fun. But my farrier invited me to park at her house. She was not going to be able to ride. But, you know, like I said, she has a private... she has direct access to the tree farm, and it's private parking, so I don't have to worry about locking my truck and making sure there isn't anything valuable, you know, visible in the parking lot. There are break-ins occasionally. I haven't had that problem, but I usually make sure there's nothing valuable, worthwhile. So yeah, Odin and I went by ourselves, and we tackled some new obstacles together. He's always a little bit nervous going out, so he wants to trot. He kind of wants to rush, but you know, I just try to reassure him, you know, it's all right, it's just us. But if he gets really alert about something, I have learned to pay attention. Like his ears are completely forward, because he can sense things a lot farther away. So I figured it was some deer that was probably at least 100 yards or more away. This is how sensitive horses are. I don't know whether he smelt them or he heard them. Couldn't see them because we were still on the trail in the trees. And when we arrived at where the deer were, I mean, they were bedded down and in a meadow. So, I mean, it took a while to see them. But what happens is, you know, he stops, he's on his alert, his ears are completely forward, and, you know, his head's up, and he doesn't make me nervous. If it was a different horse, it would make me nervous. I would think, oh, he's gonna bolt, it's gonna get, you know, really bronky here, because that happens. I've had that happen with other horses. I know he is just assessing, and I let him assess. And then when I see him start flicking an ear back, and he's looking for input from me. That's what I interpret that to mean. So then I say, okay, let's walk on. And we walk on for a while, and then he has to assess again. Okay, and then repeat. You know, when the ear flicks back, it's time for my input. If it were a different horse, I might handle it very differently. I might get off because I don't, and I might walk forward with him in tow to check it out, because it's probably not anything really dangerous. I mean, the other possibilities could be a coyote, could be a bobcat, a mountain lion, a bear. Are those things dangerous? Of course. But what is their normal reaction? They're going to run off. So when they see us. So I don't worry about stuff like that. Also, my farrier knew where I was, and I told her the day before that I had a time limit on how much I could spend out there. So presumably, if she would have seen my truck and trailer still in her yard at, 2 p.m., she would have at least tried contacting me. So hopefully coming looking for me if I didn't respond. Anyway, so we got out to the meadow, saw the deer. Okay, great. And also, once we get going in a direction, I let Odin pick the path. He has gone off trail, which I don't I find that very interesting that he wants to do that. But in the forest, it can be a little bit dangerous because there's a lot of times holes. Stumps rot out and fallen logs rot out, and there's holes. And so I'll let him go for a little while. And it's like, okay, that was a fine idea, but let's go back to safer ground. So I let him pick the route. He is not always great about wanting to come back the same way. I don't have a really great sense of direction, so I try to keep track at every turn. And this forest, these trails, it's a working forest. So there are logging roads and lots of trails that people cut in with the landowner's permission. They do allow recreation on it. It's a huge tree farm. I don't know how many tens of thousands of acres. There's probably 30 or 40 miles of trails in there. Anyway, lots of roads, lots of crisscross. So it's good to keep track. And I do use a tracker, a GPS tracker on my phone. So as long as my phone battery is fine, I can find my way back. So the next obstacle that Odin and I ran to was a creek. We have crossed this creek with other horses. We have not crossed it by ourselves. So he was hesitant. He didn't want to do it, but we did it. I didn't punish him or anything. I just encouraged him, and every time he took a step forward, and I told him what a brave horse he was, and what a good job he did. So we got through the creek, up and over the other side, and then continued on the trail. He could go right or left. He tended to choose a route that we had been on before. Probably been on other routes too, and I would have recognized it. But interestingly, he chose a path that went over a wooden bridge. Wooden bridges are also kind of scary to horses because there's a space underneath, and conceptually, I don't think they really understand that. It's just unfamiliar, and they don't know whether the bridge is solid. So he tested it out. He kind of steps on it and make sure that it sounds okay, and then we got across. Great, good job. So, we went on. I had set my timer for like 45 minutes or so. We ended up at a place very familiar to both of us. And I think he was going to the assistant farrier's house because we had ridden out there before, and I think he was headed in that direction because where we turned around, it was awfully close, and he really wanted to keep going in that direction toward her house. And I was like, no, it's time for us to go back. So we went back. We came across other horses, a group of 5. I recognized one of them. I'd ridden with her at a prize ride, which I think I talked about in a previous episode and have pictures of it. A beautiful black Mustang mare named Legacy, very spicy mare. She has a very capable rider. So we said hi to her. Odin got in that group of horses. We were trying to let him pass, and he's like, nope, I want to go with him. So we followed them for a little bit until there was a better place to turn around, and then he and I went on our way. And then later, not too much longer, we came across another group of three riders. The gentleman in the lead was an older gentleman, and he was riding a very stout, stocky quarter horse. And he was saying lots of nice things about Odin. And he actually asked me if Odin was a warm blood. Which is generally a pretty fancy type of horse. Some of those were originally imported from Europe, and no, he's a Mustang. He's like the stray dog of horses. But it was a nice compliment. Odin is a very handsome horse. And then the other 2 riders went by, and the last one was leading a foal, a young horse, along. With her horse, which is a great idea. I would love to do that with Bragi, and I think my trainer and I will do that someday, but he needs to have a lot more emotional control than he does right now. And Odin needs more experience too. He's still, just from the, the hesitance that he has on the bridge and the creek, he just needs more experience. So that's what we're working on. and being alone. He doesn't mind being alone. I was a little bit surprised he wanted to follow that first group of horses, because ordinarily he's pretty indifferent to groups. If the group rides off, he's okay with that. But that was kind of fun to learn. And there was one intersection we got to. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm not sure which direction. Odin started off in a direction, and I let him. And then I checked my phone to make sure I was on the track, and we were. So, and then I recognized all the other turns. So that was, whew. We got back to the truck and went back home. And then the final part of Sunday is I picked up my dad, and my 80-year-old dad, and we went for a walk. So it was a really nice day. We went out to Bayview. There's a Padilla Bay trail. It's probably actually pronounced Padilla. It's been called Padilla for as long as I can remember. So that's what I call it. I think it's more new people who probably pronounce words of that origin more correctly. Pronounce it Padilla. I may change. I may not. I've lived here for pretty much all my life. So as long as, I mean, if someone corrects me and tells me that, you know, it's really incorrect and insulting to call it Padilla, then I'll change. I will absolutely change. So that I don't have I mean, that's fair, right? Why not honor the correct way of doing things if that is indeed correct. So on that note, I will post some pictures. Hopefully I'll get them in the right order of my mom and my sister eating dinner, or waiting for dinner possibly in Sturgeon Bay up in Door County. I'll post pictures of the Veggie Derby. I'll post pictures of our trail ride. And then finally I'll end with my dad sitting on a bench. So I will try to get the show notes up today, and those will be in the description box. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I know I forgot to say welcome. I'm glad you're here watching, and if you like it, feel free to like and subscribe. I don't have any financial investment in this. I just do it because I like to tell stories, and I hope that you enjoy them too. So have a great day, and I'll see you after we get back.